Hello, this is Grandma Leah, daughter of Jerusalem. First, just appreciate, then complain later. Welcome to my channel, where we share and discuss inspirational stories and share motivational acts of gratitude, appreciation, and patriotism. Today, I'm going to discuss and share with you a historic patriotic story, the rise of Paul Revere. Welcome to my channel. Paul Revere, a patriot, a man of value without procrastination. He took upon himself, a Boston silversmith, to do a historic ride to benefit his country, his nation. But why are we in fact talking about Paul Revere? Why is it important? It is important that a man took upon himself the initiative to do something good for his country, for his comrades, for his people. That is why I've had an urge to share with you this historic act of patriotism. Revere, a patriot, a man of value without procrastination. He took upon himself, a Boston silversmith, to do a historic ride to benefit his country, his nation. But why are we in fact talking about Paul Revere? Why is it important? It is important that a man took upon himself the initiative to do something good for his country, for his comrades, for his people. That is why I've had an urge to share with you this historic act of patriotism. Welcome to my channel, Grandma Leah, the daughter of Jerusalem. This iconic act, the midnight ride of Paul Revere, was one of the very important things that happened during the American Revolution of Independence. They had asked the British monarch to let them have the independence, so stop paying taxes to the British government. But King George betrayed them. He did not want them to be independent of him because, of course, obviously, they were paying to the crown. They were paying money to the crown. So he did not want that. So what happened? So he embarked. He took a whole ship load of redcoats. Okay, that was the British soldiers, to send them to crush the revolution. And this took place in 1875. So on April 18, 1875, a silversmith from Boston took upon himself and to ride, to go down to Concord to inform the militias there that the British were coming. And the man who took the initiative was Paul Revere. And Paul had to ride the whole midnight. How? So Paul, his story began to be immortalized by an American poet, a writer by the name of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And Longfellow, he was a president in 1861. So you will ask yourself, 100 years of this history, right? Longfellow come along and start to write about it. So Longfellow, and the reason was that in 1861, Longfellow wrote this, emphasize and immortalize this story to encourage, to boost patriotism among the Americans. Because that was around the time of the Civil War. So he wanted to boost patriotism. And this is 100 years after the act, the historic act of Paul Revere. So let's go into it, how it was done. Paul Revere, he told his people, he crossed the Charleston River, and he was waiting there. Now he told the people, listen, when you see them coming, because they were not aware that Paul had already crossed the river, and he was just waiting for the sign, some sign. So they go up to the North Tower, in the gable of the tower, on the top, you put a lantern there. You have lantern. If they want lantern, to warn me, so I know if they are coming by sea or by land. If by land or by sea, we'll use a lantern to a Boston or North Tower, the church, the gable of the church. We are already crossed the river. So, along the way, he alerted a lot of the other people, the simple people, but to get into arms, to prepare themselves, because the British were coming in a large. But what was the aim of the British? So that they can take the weapon. All the weapon cache that they had, that was the aim, because once the militias did not have any weapon, there wouldn't be any fighting, any war. So, what was the singer? 1 minute, I will let you know. So, on April 18, 1875, a silversmith from Boston took upon himself and to ride, to go down to Concord, to inform the militias there that the British were coming. And the man who took the initiative was Paul Revere. And Paul had to ride the whole midnight. How? So Paul, his story began to be immortalized by an American poet, a writer, by the name of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And Longfellow, he was a president in 1861. So you will ask yourself, 100 years of this history, right? Longfellow come along and start to write about it. So Longfellow, and the reason was that in 1861, Longfellow wrote this, emphasize and immortalize this story to encourage, to boost patriotism among the Americans. Because that was around the time of the Civil War. So he wanted to boost patriotism. And this is 100 years after the act, the historic act of Paul Revere. So let's go into it, how it was done. Paul Revere, he told his people, he crossed the Charleston River, and he was waiting there. Now he told the people, listen, when you see them coming, because they were not aware that Paul had already crossed the river, and he was just waiting for the sign, some sign. So they go up to the North Tower, in the gable of the tower, on the top, you put a lantern there. You have lantern. if they want London, to warn me so I know if they are coming by sea or by land. If by land or by sea, we'll use the London to Boston or North Tower, the church, the gable of the church. Revere already crossed the river. So, along the way, he alerted a lot of the other people, the simple people, but to get into arm to prepare themselves because the British were coming in a large. But what were they aim of the British? So that they can take the weapon. All the weapon cache that they had, that was the aim. Because once the militias did not have any weapon, there wouldn't be any fighting, any war. So, what was the singer? 1 minute, I will let you know. So they decided to hang the lantern, as I said, in the gable of the church at the top. 1 by land, 2 by sea. So this way they will know how the British are coming. So Paul Revere got on his horse and he rode all through the night. And he was joined by 2 other people that the credit is due, Davis and Prescott. And what were they reasoning? They were going to Concord in Massachusetts. Their mission was to alert the leaders of the militia, who were John Hancock and Samuel Adams. So when he got the whole night, even though, and later on in the story we learned that Paul was detained, but he was later free. He was set out, And but the important thing was that, as I said, when the whole night and he prepared the people, everybody was ready for the British. And this is how, and they was in 1875. And after that big war, when they got to Lexington and got to Concord and informed the people, so that's how, when the larger war that they had in the American Revolution, it led them to win, because if the British had confiscated their weapon, or the cache of their weapon, so they wouldn't have weapon, they wouldn't be able to fight. So, but when they did that, when Paul Revere won, then they were all prepared. But the point of this was not about the war so much. Yes, it was the Patriotic Act, the war, but I want to share the important thing I want to tell you. It was also about Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He was in 1861. He wrote this poem. Longfellow wrote his poem, as I said before, to boost morale among the people. So in 1861, they were on the brink of civil war, and the people. And Longfellow was an American poet. He wrote a lot of different nice poems, and like he was known for the wayside inn, where all the people would come and say, like a place they would drink, and everybody would tell their own personal stories. And he was the one documenting and writing all the stories, and he has a lot of books. I will put a link down if you're interested in American literature in that point. So, Longfellow's story, he was the one. He made the story, he immortalized this ride. He made it a story icon in the American history, and he shared with everybody. After 100 years, and until today, we are talking about it. Like I'm talking about it. what I want to say is that when one person make the initiative without procrastinating, this can have a strong impact of gratitude, appreciation, and patriotism. Why I say that? Because these men, in fact, they were so appreciative of the country, that what they were going to get. They were so appreciative. They decided to do this historic act of patriotism. I will read for you the poem, and we will read it together, let's see. And also, I will put a link that you can also listen to it from other historic readers and theatron. I'll put a few videos out that will connect this story. And after I read, and it's a very beautiful poem, and I will read it. It starts off by saying, "Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is alive who remembered that famous day and year." It's a beautiful poem. And I will share it together. And after that, you can discuss with me what you think. If you feel that any comment you have, you can share. If you like the content of gratitude, appreciation, patriotism, let's share together. And then you can, I want everybody, I'm going to create a community where we can share act of gratitude, appreciation, and patriotism, so that we can share and be happy about it. Because when you can show some gratitude and appreciation in your community, for your family, for your country and your nation and your society, I think you have done a lot of contribution. Grandma Leah, a daughter of Jerusalem.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, "If the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm." Then he said good night, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charleston shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset, British man of war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend, through alley and street, wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed the tower of the Old North Church, up the wooden stairs with stealthy tread, to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch. On the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade, by the trembling ladder steep and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down, a moment on the roofs of the town, and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath, in the churchyard, lay the dead, in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still that he could hear, like a sentinel's tread, the watchful night wind as it went, creeping along from tent to tent, and seeming to whisper, all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead, for suddenly all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with a heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed on the landscape far and near, then impetuous stamped the earth, and turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the Old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still. And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry of hoofs in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing a spark, struck out by a steed that flies fearless and fleet. That was all. And yet, through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night. And the spark struck out by that steed in his flight, kindled the land into flame with its heat. He has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him, tranquil and broad and deep, is the mystic, meeting the ocean tides, and under the alders that skirt its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of his steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises when the sun goes down. It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and the meeting house windows, blank and bare, gaze at him with a spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon. It was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the beating of the flock and the twitter of birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown, and one was safe and asleep in his bed. Who at the bridge would be first to fall? Who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball? You know the rest in the books you've read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For born on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please